Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. If there is one genre most people would say the original Xbox is known for, it's first-person shooters. Sure, when you take a deeper dive into the lineup of the Xbox, it has many incredible games spanning many genres, but the first-person shooter was especially prolific, and of course, Halo was at the forefront of that. The Xbox controller just feels perfect for console shooters, and many developers capitalized on that. Now the Xbox has many hits and many duds in this genre, and if you watched it a few months ago, I did a video on great shooters that aren't Halo, and today I want to give you 5 more good ones. Yet, unlike my first video, which were all my choice, I actually took to the comments and saw some of your favorites, and I'm talking about 5 of them today. So if some of your favorites are not covered today, be sure to put them in the comments below, and I'd love to cover them next time around. Yet today, I've got a nice lineup of 5 great first-person shooters for you, and quickly I want to thank my YouTube channel members, and let's hop right into this. First up is Red Faction 2, which came to the Xbox in North America a few months after its PS2 version on April 1st, 2003. What's interesting is the Xbox never got a version of the first Red Faction, which is a great game, but we did at least get the sequel, and it is a fantastic shooter. Red Faction 2 is a simple shooter, but its fast-paced, visceral destruction, which is a key trademark for the franchise, keeps this game entertaining from start to finish. Set in the dystopian future of 2080, you are a member of a group of elite soldiers that the leader Sopot has put a hit out on, betraying you. You join a resistance movement and go on a quest to destroy the Commonwealth. It's got a fun sci-fi plot with great theming. I think the great world building is what keeps this game strong in people's memories today. Not only the world building, but the destructible environments are such a fun touch that stays entertaining well past starting the game. I love how Red Faction pays attention to small details in level design. There are so many instances where you have to destroy objects or walls to continue in the level or find shortcuts. Blowing up grates to sneak through vents or take out turrets by blowing up walls around them and going behind them. I like how this game wants you to get immediately acclimated to this thought process right from the start, where you have to destroy a support beam to traverse over a fenced-in area right in the beginning. The weapon choices like the grenade launcher make this a blast of a time, and unlike most explosive weapons in other games, ammo tends to never really be an issue. The shooter controls are tight, and blasting away enemies is fast and fun. The arcadey feeling of the levels and gunplay make this work cohesively into a first-person shooter that's easy to pick up and play, meaning it would be great for multiplayer. And now at launch, this game did not have Xbox Live support, which was a pain point for critics at the time, but now that's not something to really worry about. With the ability to add bots, multiplayer is one of the strongest reasons to replay this game in my eyes. Red Faction 2 aims to keep its arcade speed alive in its multiplayer, usually set in smaller arenas with weapon pickups scattered around you. You learn these tight maps to get the one-up on your enemies. The bots in this mode are fun, and this game features extremely detailed stat tracking for these bots, which most games wouldn't have included at the time, and I love that it adds more personality to the bots themselves. Red Faction 2 is just an all-around blast with fun multiplayer that has excellent bots. A solid sci-fi story with great level design, making the destruction work well with the gameplay. Not only that, but the music is incredible here, with not only some solid ambient work, but some big techno tracks that really sell the sci-fi theming of the game. Throw in that you have voice work from Jason Statham and Lance Henriksen, which gives it a fun Hollywood action B-movie vibe, and you've got a great package. It's a fun and simple shooter that will keep you entertained and has solid replay value. Next up is Deus Ex Invisible War, which was released at the same time on PC and Xbox in North America on December 2nd, 2003. This is the second game in one of my all-time favorite series. From the original Deus Ex on PC and the later 2 games, all 3 of which I could easily put in my top 50, I love this cyberpunk franchise, and Invisible War is no exception. It's a fantastic game. Set in 2072, this entry takes place farther in the timeline than any of the other games. You play as Alex Denton, who has been moved from Chicago after the collapse, a time when multiple corporations vie for control of the world. Along the way, you unravel these plots leading to terrorism and conspiracy theories. Deus Ex's lore is deep and always incredible to dive into. And when I say dive into, you get into the role because not only is this a first-person shooter, but it's just as much an RPG. I will say it's not as in-depth as the other games in the series due to them trying to streamline it for consoles, but I don't think it detracts from the game. Invisible War ends up coming out feeling like something different, which isn't a bad thing, but it still has all of the series' style. This game has a heavy focus on building your own story, character, and playstyle. With your character, you can select from a wide array of augments that will help enhance certain aspects of yourself. You can make yourself augmented to do simple things like see in the dark, or toxic fumes won't affect you. But some will make your melee hit stronger, or help you sneak better, giving you the choice of how you want to play the game. I think every Deus Ex excels in level design, and giving you so many options for routes that you can feel like each playthrough is completely different just because you leaned into a certain different augment. These levels are tight and compact, yet intricate. Due to the console's limitations, a lot of the areas feel closed off and like tight concrete boxes, but it works into the game's dystopian future feel, and they still get a lot out of that concept. There are tons of vents, areas to sneak under, and rooms upon rooms of stuff to do. It reminds me a lot of old school dungeon crawlers in a way, yet the first-person shooter elements are still here and feel solid. It uses an auto-aim feature and has many weapons to roll through. If you're like me, stealth isn't your strongest suit, and eventually it'll come down to you blasting your way through areas, and it feels great. I think this RPG first-person shooter hybrid helped you get into the role that they have devised, and it's a good time. I even like how there aren't different ammo types, each weapon uses the same type, and it depletes your stock in different ways. Dialogue is another huge element of this game, with large dialogue trees and surprisingly solid voice work for the time. Every once in a while you might get a character where the voice isn't the greatest, but at least what is written is great. There's a lot of lore building here, and I think a lot of fans will get a kick out of this one. This game is insane with the amount of stuff there is to do. There are many side missions to dig through, and a ton of alleyways with people just to speak to. It's a world you can get lost in. I will say the frame rate can get sluggish in busier areas, and I know a lot of fans don't like how streamlined this one is, but I think it's a solid side adventure for the franchise. Even for newcomers, this game takes place so far in the future that I don't think it's a bad place to pick up. It has a good amount of first-person shooter action, and the RPG elements are not as hardcore, but it's still a solid and fun streamlining. Invisible War is just another fun RPG on the console, and a fun shooter on top of that. So going through the comments of the last video, I could have picked any Rainbow Six game released on the original Xbox, but I decided to go with the first one released on the original Xbox with Rainbow Six 3, releasing October 28th, 2003. This is the most tactical approach of all of the first-person shooters on this list today, with more of a focus on controlling a squad of characters and taking on enemies thoughtfully and slowly. Set in 2007, this game has you playing Domingo Chavez, who leads a rainbow team to take out terrorists. The terrorist plot is thickly detailed with many layers that would be a spoiler to the game, but it does feature government intrigue and an all-around goal to stop oil exports to the US. This story is dead serious and feels like the exact type of military novel that Tom Clancy would have written. If you are into a hard-boiled military novel, this story here is actually quite interesting and stands out as something completely different in the sea of shooters on the original Xbox. Now, gameplay will take some getting used to for some people. It's not the type of game where you can really rush in and shoot enemies like target practice. You have to take your time. Enemies do die fast from your guns, but in turn you die extremely fast from their firepower. It's not an easy game at all, unless you make sure to command your troops perfectly. In this game, you work as a squad leader, and you have the ability to issue out several commands to the troops, like following you or getting behind cover. You also have the ability to tell them to breach doors using flashbangs or other various equipment. This comes with even more choices to have them automatically do it, or only on your signal. It's surprisingly dense for the time, but not confusing in the slightest. The controls are all intuitive and spelled out very clearly. The game will never hold your hand and tell you what method is best where. It's part of the fun to make these choices and just hope that it goes well. Shooting itself feels realistic with some hardcore recoil effects and not needing much ammo to take out enemies. It took me some getting used to, but works for the game's more realistic style and makes for quite a tense experience. This, with only being able to save a limited amount during gameplay, makes every choice matter, which I know is up a lot of people's alleys. One thing I noticed while going through it this time was just how great this game looks. It's fantastic for 2003, and so many environments have great lighting and effects to them. It's surprisingly littered with small details, and the tight corridors you have to command troops through build up the more tactical feeling of the game. A major part of this franchise on the original Xbox was its Xbox Live functionality, and I did not play this back in its heyday, but I have actually played this one on Insignia, which is the Xbox Live replacement project. I will say it is hard as hell, like the campaign. You die fast in it, but that's part of the fun. You take it slower and you get rewarded for that in return. The map design online is great too, capitalizing on what made the single player work so well with small detailed areas. I will say it was not looking good for me on there. I wasn't playing my best, but I still had a lot of fun with it. Rainbow Six 3 is a hardcore, tactical shooter, but even with its slowness, it still manages to be a highly entertaining game. The tactical elements are tightly designed, with each room feeling like a puzzle of some type on how to best take everyone out without any unneeded damage or casualties. It's more thoughtful, and that's why it still stands out on this console. Next up is Medal of Honor Frontline, releasing on November 7th, 2002, just a few months after its initial PS2 launch. This is the only World War II shooter featured on this list today, and there is a vast amount of entries into that genre on the Xbox. However, Medal of Honor is one of my favorite shooter franchises in this generation. I am a huge history nerd, and if you've been watching this channel for some time, you should know I love video game and movie history, but I also love world history, and Medal of Honor always did a great job of presenting documentary footage, as well as faithfully recreating important moments in war history. This game opens on D-Day, and for its time, it feels visceral, and it's a really cool gaming moment. Running up the beach and helping out squad mates and making a tough fight to reach the bunkers, all while explosions ring around you, is great for the time. The shooting itself in the game is fairly simplistic, using guns that are accurate for the time. You can aim down sights, but it's simple enough to allow hip fire most of the time. Enemies generally will just flow out of areas and not require too much firepower to take out. It's not very tactical and does feel like shooting at targets as they appear. Not that I don't enjoy that though. I think part of the fun of first-person shooters sometimes is its simplicity. It controls well and guns feel good. There's something about getting into the zone of taking out enemies in awesome locales that's just a great time. The level design is fairly solid with a great look to it. Its graphics aren't mind-blowing, but it does have a nice dedication to its level design that makes fighting in these areas look great. One of my favorite levels happens to be a submarine-based one where you have to infiltrate the tight corridors of a sub while dodging enemy fire. Levels like this are fun to break up the game because it is realistic, but doesn't entirely feel like it has to match up with the most famous battles. It captures that front of World War II in its dark and gritty tone. The art design works well with its dark lighting, and in-between footage showing documentary footage of the war makes everything feel cohesive. It feels like a classic World War II doc that you would have seen on the History Channel back in the day. This is mixed with the excellent military score of Michael Giacchino, whose early work on all of the Medal of Honor games is spectacular. Medal of Honor is pretty simplistic when compared to the rest of the lineup I'm talking about today, but that does not mean it's a bad time. Simplicity sometimes is a gateway to just having a plain good time, and Frontlines for sure has that. The shooting is great and the level design and look are well done. If you like World War II history, this is for you. But if you like to just go around and have some fun shooting enemies, you get that too. It's just a plain fun war shooter and a good time. The final game on today's list is Far Cry Instincts. This is by far my most played game on today's list, and revisiting it here, it's still a fantastic experience. Released on September 27th, 2005, this console remake of the PC game Far Cry is an Xbox exclusive. I remember picking this one up on a whim with hardly any hype for it and being blown away by its look and gameplay. In Far Cry, you play as Jack Carver, who is trapped on a set of islands overrun with mercenaries, and you have to save a reporter. The plot is fairly simple, but it gets enhanced by going in a supernatural direction with the addition of feral powers. Along with the gameplay style and feral powers, the game gives you the ability to conquer its many areas in whatever way you see fit. You can ravage areas with your guns, sneak past and stealthily kill enemies, or attempt to mix of both. So the gameplay usually consists of you going around from encampment to encampment, each laid out in various configurations. The stealth mechanics are well done here and never become tiresome. I think that's because you have a lot of interesting options with this game, like a stealthy option where you can tie a fake branch to a tree and let it slap people as they walk by, or you have the ability to climb under huts and shoot at enemies through cracks in the floorboards. Aside from that though, the shooting in general is a lot of fun, with a lot of the same various weapons you'll find from other games of the era, and it feels pretty on par from how they would normally feel. Shooting at enemies is great, and the AI is surprisingly solid. I'm also usually not one to snipe in video games, but I think the sniper rifle in this game is very satisfying. On top of the weapon combat, this game also has vehicles that control like you would expect from Halo. I've always enjoyed this control scheme, and I am always surprised how much this game relies on you getting around by vehicles. They always want you to travel on paths by taking cars, and it feels smooth and is always a great setup for some great chase moments. Far Cry Instincts also looks fantastic with great jungle textures and lighting that fits the island locale perfectly. It is a lot of the same environments, but it usually is done in such a wide open space, it's easy to get lost in the look and style that Far Cry has created, especially with its amazing looking water. The sound effects are great too, and I recommend playing with headphones on and hearing the different sounds your feet make on different terrain. It's stellar. This is another game that Xbox Live was a huge part of its identity back in the day, and it's playable on Insignia today. I regularly see sessions for this one and its sequel if you want to check it out and play it online again. The part I loved about this game growing up was its map creator, and it's still absolutely fantastic today. The amount of items you can place down and the sheer detail you can develop out with these maps is so much fun to just build and run around in, even alone. Or at least it was for me when I was a teenager playing through this map editor, and I won't lie, going back to it, I was still having a lot of fun with it. This is a great one, and its sequel is worth talking about later in the series too. I highly recommend playing the original Far Cry games if you never touched them before. But that wraps it up for first-person shooters on the original Xbox. Of course, these are only 5 of the vast amount of great first-person shooters on the console, so be sure to share your favorites in the comments. I'll consider them for the next installment in the series. I really enjoyed going through these games today. While I do plan eventually doing full-length reviews of each of these games, I also think these theme lists are a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like as it helps me out a lot in the algorithm, subscribe to stay updated with more retro Xbox content, and I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.